Hey everybody, today I'm talking about Architects of the West Kingdom, which is a 2018 release board game by Shem Phillips. The game takes about 60 to 90 minutes to play and accommodates 1 to 5 players. Now, I assume you know what worker placement is if you're watching this video, and in a way, or in a lot of ways, Architects of the West Kingdom has a lot of those kind of tried and tested worker placement mechanisms. You know, where you're placing your workers down on spots, collecting resources, you know, your woods, your stones, your golds, trading them in to build buildings and stuff like that in order to get victory points. However, Architects of the West Kingdom does have a few different things about it which kind of separates it from a lot of those other style games. The game is pretty, I'd consider it like a medium lightweight game where there is enough going on in it to kind of keep slightly more experienced players interested. But the barrier to entry is still pretty low for this one. So as I said, the idea of the game is that you're putting your workers on these different spots on the board, collecting those resources to buy buildings. You can buy new workers to give you more abilities. There's also these different tracks you can climb up, this virtue track, which I'll cover in a second, and you can also kind of contribute to the cathedral to get points that way. But the things that really separate this from those other games, such your Stone Ages, your Lords of Waterdeeps, all those kind of worker placement games that are so kind of infamous with this kind of gateway level Euro game genre. One of those things is that when you place your workers onto these different spots, for each person you place there, you get an additional resource. So say I put my first worker on the forest, I'd get a wood, but then I place another one on there, I'd get 2 wood, and then 3 wood, and then 4 wood. So you can really ramp up as the game goes on. You can kind of, get a quick intake of resources if you really do pull your workers together. There is a risk that goes with that as well, because any time in the game, another player can actually go to another spot and arrest all your workers from a location and put them on their player board, which means they've taken all these workers off your workers off that spot and are kind of holding them to ransom. And later on, they can trade those in to the jail and get money for those for each worker that they send to jail. But something that's a bit different as well is the fact that when you do put your worker on a spot, you are not kind of you're not the only person who can go there. Other people can get on those spots as well, which actually is a bit of a kind of double-edged sword for me, because one of the things I really do love about worker placement is the scarcity of those spots, and the brain-racking decisions on where you're going to go, because you don't want to miss out on one thing because another player's going to get there before you. But in a lot of the spots in Architects of the West Kingdom, just because I go there doesn't mean you can't go there, which is a different approach. And if you think of that what you will. But again, I suppose what kind of counteracts that is the fact that if you do heavily invest in one spot, then another player can strip that away from you and keep your workers at ransom. The game also has this very unique kind of virtue system where there is kind of this track, and the higher you go up on this track means that you are going to get more points at the end of the game. But the lower the end of the track, you're going to end up losing points, but you can do different things that kind of really do boost you, can give you kind of underhanded tactics throughout the game, such as going to the black markets where you can get resources at a quicker conversion rate. And also kind of collecting taxes, because a lot of these actions you go to, you're going to have to pay, or whenever you pay money, a certain amount of that money is going to go to this tax house. And if you can, there's a spot you can go to and take all the money from the tax house, and which is a great way to accumulate money. But again, when you do take these underhanded actions, you're going to go further and further down on that track. And when you get the lower points on that track, it's going to restrict you from adding to the cathedral, which is another great way of getting points, because you can trade in these resources to climb up this track and get to the higher points, which is going to get you a lot of end game scoring. But again, if you focus on those really negative points in the game, or those kind of underhanded ones, you're going to get kind of shut out of doing so, which is a kind of a cool system to balance, because you do want to get those actions expedited at times, to get those resources quicker, but you do have to counteract the fact that you're going to score negative points if you keep doing so. So that's another really cool thing about Architects of the West Kingdom that again separates it from a lot of the rest of the games in this kind of parameters of worker placement games. Another thing that I really do like about the game is the pacing of the game, because there is no rounds in this game whatsoever. You are literally just constantly putting workers down. There's no kind of phases or anything like that. there's a constant flow from start to finish, and the game ends once a certain amount of people are kind of contributed to a certain spot on the board, which is going to get you, well, going to basically work towards the end of the game. So that's really nice. There's no downtime whatsoever, and all the quick turns are very, very snappy. And yeah, there's lots of things to focus on as well in terms of, you know, buying your characters in your hands, which are going to give you bonuses or cheaper discounts or lots of different things like that. And there's set collection methods, and you know, in order to buy certain buildings, you need to have certain workers to do so. So there's quite a lot going on, but still, I think the game feels breezy enough to introduce to you know, newer players to the hobby. So meaningful decision-wise, there is a lot going on. I said, do you want to, you know, really rush on building the cathedral? Because when you get to certain points on the board, there are choke points. So players behind you can't get higher than you. Or, you know, are you going to go for a virtuous approach? Are you going to go for a non-virtuous approach? You know, are you going to take the tax money while there's a lot there, or you know, risk waiting longer to get more reward? You know, which characters do you want to build to your hand of cards? And you can choose to pay money to skip over certain characters to get ones further along the line. Which buildings do you want? You know, when are you going to pull the trigger to arrest other players, or are you going to kind of spread your workers around so that, you know, you're at lower risk of being arrested by other players? When are you going to get your workers out of jail? Because once a certain point of the, you know, of the game progression goes on, you're going to score negative points for having workers in jail. So there's a lot to think about here and a lot to balance, but still without being overwhelming whatsoever. And all those different approaches as well seem pretty well balanced, and I don't think there's a runaway strategy you can take in the game. Mechanically, very smooth, just a simple worker placement aspect to it. So again, there's not a lot of cogs turning together, and it's still very digestible, which is quite nice. And the time investment as well for this game is really good, actually. It takes about an hour to, well, the box I think says 60 to 80 minutes. But you know, from most of my experiences, I've got the game down to about an hour, which is a really nice timestamp, and it does feel like you're getting a good game for that amount of time. Replayability wise, for me, it's a bit, there's not a lot of mileage in it for me personally, because, you know, I think once you've tried, you know, the virtuous approach and the non-virtuous approach, there's not really a lot of different avenues to explore. But I suppose that goes hand in hand with the weight of the game. You know, there's not a ton of paths to victory, and I think from most of the gameplays, you're going to dabble in most things. But I suppose you could really focus on being extremely virtuous and getting lots of points that way, or really contributing to the cathedral, and stuff like that. So there is things to explore, but I think for a more, or for players who like heavier games, I think there's going to be a limited amount of, you know, a limited hook to keep you coming back to this one. Interaction-wise, I think it's pretty good, to be honest, especially for a Euro game, because, you know, you've got that aspect of having to arrest other players or them arresting you. You know, the limited spaces of building to the cathedral. So yeah, there's quite a lot going on in terms of, you know, getting places quicker than others, and also, you know, going to the black market spots because they're limited, or, you know, when are you going to take the tax money? That's, you know, you want to be the first to do it, and you've got to weigh up what the other players are just about to do, and when to allocate that worker at the right time. Aesthetically, I think the game looks lovely. I really do like the art approach of most of Shem Phillips' games. I think they're mostly done by the same artist. I think he's called the Miko. But his art approach and Shem Phillips' games are really kind of becoming quite symbiotic, and you know, when you see that artwork, you do think of a Shem Phillips game, which is quite good branding, I suppose. And I do like the artwork by its own merit. Component quality as well is really top quality. There's no cheap, you know, cut corners here. I think all the pieces are very nice. It's got a nice clean look and a clean aesthetic. All the symbology is very easy to understand, and I think before long you're going to have it all on board without having to refer to the rulebook at all, which is really good. And I suppose the theme as well is, you know, it works well, but it's that standard kind of medieval, you know, collect resources, contribute to the cathedral, that kind of thing. Nothing new there whatsoever, but with a new kind of aesthetic wrapped around it. And the setup and teardown time as well is really good. You know, you've got a few bunch of cards, give them a shuffle, and you're pretty much good to go. There's not really a lot of a lot of setup that goes into it. And something I should have mentioned as well is that you can actually choose to play the game with your, with everybody starting on the same kind of level or same platform, or everybody's got a kind of unique player ability if you want to, because there are a number of different player sheets which have a unique or a subtle unique player power. I like the progression of the game is quite good, because as I said, when you are allocating workers to these spots, you're ramping up on the rewards you're taking in return. So there is a good amount of progression, and it does tick along really nicely. It doesn't feel like you're ever in a lull of the game or anything like that. Scalability as well is really good. I mean, it works really well at 2-player and more than that as well. I think it's because the turns are quick, and the number of kind of contributors to the cathedral and stuff it's weighted on the amount of players. So the more players there is, the more kind of spots you're going to kind of contribute your workers to, which triggers the end of the game. And in terms of comparisons, I mean, there are so many games that I could compare this to, which is a plus and a negative. I mean, in a plus way, people are going to feel very familiar with this kind of game straight away if they're even semi-experienced in the hobby. But again, there are those few different touches that just keep it slightly separately or distant to its kind of its relatives. But yeah, overall, I do like the game. I did enjoy my plays. I think I can certainly see why it's got as popular as it has, and I can see why his games are so well received, because they're very clean, very quick. No downtime. They look nice. There's enough strategy going on, but still easy to introduce to new players. But for me personally, there isn't a huge amount to, for me to really get excited about, because again, I've seen it all 1,000 times. Collect, buy a building and stuff like that. It feels very, very, very familiar. And again, some people can take that in a very good way, but me personally, I like games that feel very different to other games. Ones that just have that extra layer or two of strategy and things to really rack your brains about. Now, looking at this game objectively, it is a solid design, and definitely better than a lot of those kind of gateway level worker placement games. I prefer this to Lords of Waterdeep, which again I think is a solid game. I prefer this to Stone Age. I've not played any of Shem Phillips' other games, but I'm kind of quite intrigued to try out Paladins of the West Kingdom, because that is the kind of next level in its complexity. But again, in its own merit, Architects of the West Kingdom is a really well designed game. It's a lot of fun, it's quick, and I can see a lot of people really enjoying this one. But for me, I personally like something a little bit heavier, and for that reason it's not going to stay in my collection, but I can't give it anything but a positive review. It gets a solid 7 out of 10 for me. So yeah, if you do like that weight of games that you can still introduce to your family but still have enough going on for you, then Architects is definitely one to check out. So that concludes my review of Architects of the West Kingdom. If you have enjoyed the review, please hit like and subscribe to my channel, and check out my other videos too. You can also support me on Instagram and Patreon, which I'll leave the links below. For everyone else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye.